Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Natalie Brooke. I am a work from home wife and soon to be mother. I'm actually almost 32 weeks pregnant at this point. And today we are chatting all about birth plans. What is a birth plan? Why do you need a birth plan? How do you make your own birth plan? And I'm gonna go over my birth plan and all the things that we are intending for our child to enter this world. I'm really excited about this one, and I think that a lot of my decisions might be a little controversial, but regardless, I think that birth and labor is a topic that has been highly fear-mongered, and I just really think that some light needs to be shed on the fact that every woman can have an empowering birth, and it doesn't have to be something that's super scary. So yeah, if any of that interests you, or maybe you wholeheartedly disagree with everything that I say, and you want to put it in the comments, stick around and let's chat about it. So let me again just preface this by saying this is my very first pregnancy. I'm going to be a first-time mother, and ultimately a lot of the beliefs that I hold right now could change. But let's be real, my beliefs have changed so much in the last 7 months, just as I've read more and more and done more research about birth and motherhood. So like with any topic, as you learn more, your beliefs can change. Also, there's still a ton that I do not know, but that's why I'm surrounding myself with people who are more knowledgeable than me and I can shoot a message to and they can help me out in the moment. I think that being pregnant for the first time and just thinking about the fact that you're excited to meet your baby, but also like you have to push them out of you, that can be frightening. And honestly, really conflicting when it comes to navigating your emotions. But I'm choosing to go into this experience without fear, with a positive attitude, and ultimately just being grateful for the opportunity. So what is a birth plan? I'm gonna be honest, when I first got pregnant, I wasn't even planning to make one. My original birth plan was to do zero research and just go into it knowing that my providers know what they're doing and that they can take care of me, and I was just gonna show up and let the baby come out. That was a dumb idea. So don't do that. I'm very glad that I changed my perspective on that. I know that I'm the type of person that kind of needs to know what's going on in order to feel safe in an environment. So if I did absolutely no research, I would, for one, not feel safe and secure. And for two, I wouldn't be able to advocate for myself as I wouldn't really know what I did and didn't want. As my husband and I took a few birthing classes and we learned more and more about the process of giving birth, I started to kind of identify things that I knew that I wanted to happen and things that I knew that I absolutely did not want to happen in my birth. So that's a key point. It's not just important to know what you want your birth to look like, it's also important to know what you don't want your birth to look like. And basically all a birth plan is writing out those things. What do you want? What do you not want? That way, for one, your support team knows what you want. And for two, when you're in the trenches and you're in pain and maybe your brain isn't making rational decisions, you can be reminded, hey, I wanted this. I don't want this. Because in reality, your brain may get to the point where the only rational thing it can think of is do whatever it takes to get this baby out of me. And those things may go against your initial wishes. So I'm gonna pop up my birth plan and we're just kinda gonna go down it and talk about what a birth plan is. So at the top, I have her name and her gender. I also have a section that has my information on it. So my name, date of birth, my due date, any allergies that I have, and if I've had any other pregnancies before this. I also have a section for my support team, which lists who all is gonna be present at my birth and what their role is. I also included the birth location, and all this information does is make sure that my providers know what they need to know about me and my baby, and they'll also know each other on the team, which all of my support members know each other, so that's not a huge deal. But if I were to be transferred, it would be important for the new provider to know, hey, this is who's here with me. So I basically split my birth plan into 3 main sections. I've got my labor wishes, my birth wishes, and then my postpartum wishes. Under labor wishes, first thing I did was list the environment that I want my room to be. I listed what I want the lighting to be like, the smells, the sounds, stuff like that. And then I also listed any sort of coping mechanisms that I want to use during my birth and things that I'm comfortable with. And you can also list things that you're not comfortable with. It's gonna be different for everyone, but that could include breathing techniques, massage, meditation, or other things. You can also list things that you don't want. If you know that you don't like to be touched when you're in pain, put that on your birth plan, because somebody might try to come up and rub your shoulders and that might just set you off. So if they already know, like, hey, this girl does not like to be touched when she's in pain, they're not gonna come up and rub your shoulders. So the next section is birth wishes, and for me, this is just everything I want and don't want during my active labor. This can include the position that you want to give birth in, different techniques, once again, that you're comfortable or uncomfortable with, and different procedures that they may perform that you are okay with or not okay with. For example, episiotomy. And I did not know what that was until I took a birthing class, so if you don't know, look it up. It's a pretty common practice in hospital births. But really, this section just has to do with everything between active labor and when the baby comes out. The next section is postpartum wishes. So this is everything that happens right after the baby comes out. I listed all the things that I want to happen and don't want to happen post-birth. This can include your intentions for skin to skin, golden hour. If you plan to exclusively breastfeed, that's important to put on there. Your intentions for your placenta, who is cutting the cord. And this can also include any information as far as like medication that you want for yourself or don't want, and the same thing for your baby. I also added a final section called transfer wishes, and this can also be listed as in case of emergency if you're having a hospital birth. In this section, you basically just list what you want to happen if an emergency does arise. Whether that has to do with the need for a cesarean, if the baby needs resuscitation post-birth, or whatever else may arise. And then at the bottom, I had some extra room, so I just put a notes section in case my providers need to write anything down. So why do you need a birth plan? Now that I've written one, I kind of understand why I needed one, but honestly, like I said, I wasn't going to write one. Everybody on my team has a copy of my birth plan, so when I'm in labor, they're not gonna interrupt me to be like, hey, what do you want us to do to help you? They have everything they need to know because it's already written down and given to them. They also know what I wanna do post-birth and what I wanna do if I have to transfer. They know everything about what providers I wanna use and where I wanna give birth if I have to transfer. Also, if I do have to transfer, they already know how to advocate for me because they know what I want and what I don't want. It basically just leaves no room for questions and puts everybody on the same page, literally. This one. Also, just a disclaimer, everybody knows that plans do not always happen as you plan them out. So a birth plan not only paints a picture of your ideal birth, but also if anything goes off track, you've already thought about how you want to proceed. So when you're writing your birth plan, don't just think about plan A and your perfect ideal fairy tale birth. Also think about your contingency plans and write those down too. So you may be thinking, how do I write a birth plan? And it's easy to say that you should just, whip out a pen and paper and start writing things you want or you don't want in your birth. But it's not that easy if you haven't done any research, because you don't know what you don't know. So if you haven't already, I highly recommend taking a childbirth class. If your provider offers that, take theirs. If not, there's so many resources online that you can use. Later, I'm gonna mention some resources that I've been using and a few podcasts I've been listening to, and a couple of those offer some online birth classes that are at your own pace, and I would highly recommend that if you haven't, because a lot of providers don't offer childbirth classes, and it's really important if you've never done it before. So once you've done some research and you think you have a good idea of what you want and don't want, go ahead and pull out that pen and paper and start writing those things down. Once you know your preferences, you can easily just write out your birth plan on paper, or if you want a cutesy one, you can get on Etsy. There's a ton of templates out there, and for the most part, you can edit them to have the sections you want, or you might find one that you like more than mine, and you can use it as a kind of guide to help you write your birth plan. I made mine in Canva, so if you use Canva, it's super easy to just make your own in there. Another thing that really helped me was looking up sample birth plans and seeing what other people were including and how other people were organizing theirs, so that I could easily be like, okay, this is what I want mine to look like. Everybody's birth plan is gonna be different because we all want different things and we're all okay and not okay with different levels of intervention. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at other people's birth plans. So you've already seen what my birth plan looks like, and I'm just kind of gonna quickly run through it and give you our story. I mentioned in my coffee chat last week that we are planning a home birth. And let me just say that I know that home birth is not for everybody. I get it. I don't shame anybody for having a hospital birth. I was born in a hospital. I think that you can have an awesome experience having a hospital birth. And if you are planning one, I'm so excited for you. Okay, disclaimer over. I've learned that it's honestly pretty controversial to tell people that you're having a home birth, but me being the person I am, I really love telling people and just seeing their initial reaction. I don't owe anybody an explanation for why I chose a home birth, but honestly, it's become something that I'm pretty passionate about, and I just really like talking about it. I've probably gotten every single reaction from genuine curiosity and excitement to full-on opposition. Some of the reactions are honestly pretty funny too. I've had, "You mean you're not getting an epidural?" Or one, "That, I need my drugs." And then I've actually had this one quite a bit. "Oh, you're gonna have her in a little swimming pool?" Yes, but it's called a birthing tub and it's not a swimming pool, but whatever. And then people saying, "Isn't that dangerous?" Or, "Why would you do that? That's dangerous." And then my favorite, "Well, I couldn't do it, but I'm sure you'll be fine." So here's our story. When we first became pregnant, I made an appointment at an obstetrics practice. After our first appointment, I just was not getting the warm fuzzies and I didn't have a good feeling about it. We ended up having 3 appointments at this other practice, but immediately after our first one, I kind of started looking for other options. In most of today's practices, you have a rotation of doctors and midwives, and you may not see the same doctor more than once. You might see a different doctor for every single prenatal visit, and I just don't love that. You may not even know who's actually going to deliver your baby. You don't get to build a relationship with the people that are going to be at your birth. These are the people that are bringing your child into the world, and what they know about you and your history is very limited to what they read in your chart, if they read it. So long story short, I was scrolling on Facebook one day, and you know how you get random groups that you're not even in come up? Well, I had a random group come up, and it was somebody asking about midwives around our area, and I just happened to see that one midwifery service was highly recommended by several people in the comments. It was honestly just a God thing that it popped up when it did, because I didn't even know that having a home birth would be an option where we live. Our midwife is a little over an hour away, so I ended up interviewing her over Zoom, and I very quickly realized that her views about birth kind of aligned with my views about general health and wellness. Every question I asked was met with an answer that left me feeling more and more comfortable. I got off that call, and I remember the first thing I said to my mom was, "I don't care what we have to do, I'm gonna make this happen." After our first prenatal visit with our midwife, I knew that we had made the right choice. My appointments at the original obstetrics practice went something like this. You show up, you pay your copay, you wait forever, you get called back to triage, you sit in a cold exam room, you go pee in a cup. Yep, you're still pregnant. You got any questions? Nope. Okay, see you in 6 weeks. But it won't be me, it'll be a different doctor. My appointments with my midwife are so different. They are always an hour long. I'm greeted with a hug and a smile. I sit on a cozy couch while she asks me about my physical and my emotional health. She takes my blood pressure and listens to the baby's heartbeat, and she does all my measurements herself. We laugh, I've cried, and honestly, I just feel genuine compassion and care when I'm at my appointments. And if that wasn't enough, it's also cheaper than what the hospital quoted us, and it includes so much more. I have 24/7 access to my midwife, who's gonna answer any question that I have whenever it comes up. For example, I was sick last week, and all I had to do was text her and she told me what to do. We were also able to attend a series of childbirth classes that helped me feel way more prepared for birth, and that was included in the fee. Also included, I have access to a lactation consultant who is going to work with me prenatal and postpartum. This is a separate fee, but I also have hired a team of doulas who are there to support me and Dylan emotionally and help us navigate pregnancy and birth, which I'm going to add that the cost of the midwife and the cost of the doulas together is still cheaper than what the hospital quoted. So at this point, you're probably like, great, you're going the cheap route, you got a few friends that's gonna be at your birth. It's still dangerous. So I'd really like to put some info out there on midwives. It takes 4 to 6 years to become a nurse midwife. That's quite a bit of training. They are fully trained to handle most situations that can arise in a birth. They're also trained to help your baby with anything that could happen after the birth. In no particular order, I'm gonna list off some things that midwives carry in their bag. Oxygen, ambu bags in case your baby needs resuscitation, Pitocin for postpartum hemorrhaging, vitamin K, scales, catheters, Foley balloons, amni hooks in case they need to break a water bag, which is super rare, sanitary items, gloves, sterilized instruments, cleaning equipment, and sterilization products, a sharps container, stuff for an IV, stuff to transport the placenta, suturing tools for any tears that you may have, cord clamps and tools to cut it, equipment to perform CPR on the mother, a Doppler to keep an eye on the baby, stethoscope, blood pressure cuff, measuring tape, thermometer, pulse oximeter, lab supplies for blood typing, a glucometer for blood sugar, and probably a whole lot more. Also, every midwife that I've ever spoken to or listened to has said that they always carry this stuff, but they almost never have to use it. There's a reason that appointments with midwives are an hour long. At every session, they are screening you to make sure that you're still a good candidate for home birth. Also, if you're in labor and the midwife thinks that your birth may be going in a direction that could require transfer to a hospital, it's never gonna reach the point of emergency before that ambulance is called and you're getting transferred. I believe that hospitals have a purpose, and that is to heal illnesses. And birth, in my opinion, is not an illness. I believe that birth is a natural process that sometimes requires medical intervention. And many practitioners seem to look at birth as a medical procedure that the body naturally requires. Intervention is always going to be necessary in some cases. Cesareans are always going to be necessary in some cases. But people gave birth outside of the hospital for years. And in reality, most of the scary things that you hear about happening in birth are because of a necessary intervention. Hospitals give Pitocin to induce labor, and then they give you an epidural. And then that's gonna slow down labor, so they gotta give you more Pitocin to continue the contractions. And then it just escalates. So, in my opinion, my body knows how to grow this child, so my body knows how to get this child out of me. And honestly, I'm so excited to bring our little girl into the world right here in our home. With that, I'll kind of run through my birth plan real quick. So, like I said, my support team includes a couple of midwives, 3 doulas, my mom, who is a nurse, and Dylan, who is my husband. They each have a different role in my labor. The midwives are there for medical support. The doulas, my husband, and my mom are there for emotional and physical support during labor, and to make sure that I have everything I need and that everybody's taken care of. If you don't know, which I didn't, doulas are a fantastic resource to have. They're not only there for you during labor, but they're there for you during your pregnancy, and they really help you kind of navigate emotional things that may come up. And also, they come closer to the middle of your early labor, where your midwife isn't gonna come until just before active labor. So during early labor, my plan is to ignore it as long as I can, because if you don't, you're gonna tire out. If possible, I've told my husband that I want to go out to eat, or go shopping, or go to the park and walk, and just do anything during early labor to keep my mind off of being in labor. Once it gets to the point that I can't ignore it, I plan to labor at home. I want to be in a dark house with dim lighting. Since we're giving birth late November, hopefully, I plan to have my Christmas tree up already before I go into labor. Some of my coping mechanisms include music, breathing exercises, movement, taking showers, aromatherapy, distraction, counter pressure, and massage. Once I go into active labor, I'm planning to have a water birth. So I want to labor in the tub. If possible, when the baby comes, I'd like to be in some sort of squat position so that I can catch her when she comes out. I do not want an episiotomy at all, so that's something I notated in my birth plan. Once she's born, I want to do immediate skin-to-skin golden hour and try to latch her as soon as possible, as that can help release oxytocin, which can help you stop bleeding after birth. I will be attempting breastfeeding and eventually pumping. I want to delay cord clamping and bathing so that she can absorb all the goodness from her placenta. Dylan, my husband, is gonna cut the cord, and I do plan to have my placenta encapsulated. In case of emergency, we are right down the street from a hospital, which is where we will be transferred. If it comes up that I need to have a hospital birth before I go into labor, then I would like to give birth in Memphis with the doctor that did our anatomy scan. It's a little bit farther away, but that's the provider that I want. So yeah, that's our birth plan. And like I said, I want to include some resources that I've been using for the past few months. So let's get into that. So I've been reading some books and listening to some podcasts recently that I would really recommend, not just if you're having a home birth, but also if you are trying to conceive or you are pregnant. My favorite podcasts right now are The Birth Hour and the Home Birth Midwife podcast. The Birth Hour has a lot more hospital birth stories, and the Home Birth Midwife podcast, obviously, that came out like Snape, obviously has more home birth stories. And I'm gonna link both of those in the description. They also both offer courses that you can take for childbirth if your provider does not offer that. I've also been reading a book called Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, which I will warn you is a pretty extreme example of what midwifery looks like. But the first half of the book is just birth stories, and I honestly love that. Some documentaries that I've recently watched are The Business of Being Born, which basically just kind of gives some information about how hospitals are turning giving birth into a business. And another one is Birth Story, which is about Ina May Gaskin, the same lady that wrote the book that I mentioned. And like I said, she's pretty extreme, but she's kind of the mother of modern midwifery. And she kind of started a movement for home birth back in the 70s. Which, keep in mind, back then they were like putting women in twilight sleep to give birth and tying them down to tables. So it was definitely needed back then. All right, well, that's all for this one. I hope it's helpful if you're thinking about writing a birth plan. If you have any questions for me or comments in general, put them in the comment box below and I will do my best to get back to them. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.